I'm Bill Good. Good morning. What killed the Prosperity Mine? Or is it on life support? The provincial government had once approved the gold copper mine, but it's now been twice rejected by a federal government that seems to want to support resource extraction, wants to move oil from the oil sands to Asia, despite enormous public backlash. The Taseko mine project near Williams Lake was first rejected because it was determined that the mine's tailings would put a small lake called Fish Lake at risk. The mining company went back to the drawing board and came up with a new plan. The plan didn't pass the federal environmental review. Even conservatives like Caribou Prince George MP Dick Harris and Kamloops Thompson MP Cathy McLeod are speaking against the ruling. And former Williams Lake Mayor, now Liberal MLA Donna Barnett, says the decision was crushing for workers in the region. BC Energy Minister Bill Bennett was equally upset. He'd gone to Ottawa personally to champion the mine. Environmentalists, including local First Nations, are ecstatic. A big win for them. In a moment, we'll talk with the president and CEO of Taseko, but first, this exclusive break is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of BC. Russ Hallbauer is president and CEO of Taseko. Mr. Hallbauer, good morning. Is this project dead?
Well, you have to look at it in the context of where we find ourselves with what went on with the panel review, the undertakings that you illustrated in your opening remarks in terms of our commitment to the environment with respect to the $300 million we put forward in addressing the concerns raised in 2010. But as we look at it today, it's certainly pretty much encumbered with what the federal government has done.
So what do you hope to accomplish with a judicial review?
Well, I think, Bill, first let me say, we are terribly disappointed for the people of the Caribou. We are the largest single employer in the central BC, between the towns of Williams Lake and Quesnel and 100 Mile. We spent $700 million expanding our Gibraltar mine. We employ 700 people there. So not only is this a serious discouragement for us, it's very serious for the folks in that area. The judicial review, I think, is to review the undertakings that were put before us by the federal government with respect to the panel, how the panel operated, whether the panel undertook their duties in terms of procedural fairness, whether they took into consideration all the technical findings that were put forward. I mean, we spent 4 years and $5 or $6, $7 million in re-engineering this at the express purpose to clarify the environmental issues that the federal government raised with us. And then the panel used incorrect information provided by Natural Resources Canada in their deliberations, and they came up with the finding that there would be significant adverse environmental effects to Fish Lake, that lake you referred to in your opening comments.
What do you mean they used improper information?
Well, we hired one of the preeminent engineering firms in the world that does tailings dam design. We knew that this was going to be a very important and actually the most important consideration with respect to moving the project forward. Knight Piésold, our engineering firm, has designed similar dams all over the world. In fact, they had just recently completed the dam design for the Mount Milligan mine, which is now operating in northern BC, identical to the proposal that we put forward to the federal government. The scientists or the engineers in the Natural Resources Canada did not accept Knight Piésold's engineering design, and in fact created their own design to give to the federal minister with respect to deliberations on how much the tailings dam may or may not leak.
So, expand on that. Did they not look at the plan, the proposal that you and your engineers had actually put forward?
Bill, that is the $100 question.
Well, it sounds like it's more like a $100 million question.
Well, I guess it's maybe a $2 billion question.
Yeah.
We've been trying to talk to the federal government about this issue for months, and we have had no response. We have not talked to anybody in the federal government for over 2 months now.
But as it stands, we have $1 billion in gold and copper that's going to be kept in the ground to save a small lake, albeit a beautiful one with lots of fish, although you claim that your new proposal would not have endangered that lake.
Absolutely, Bill. Unequivocally. I mean, the dam we proposed and we engineered is 2 kilometers upstream from the present Fish Lake. Our commitment was to save Fish Lake, and in fact, if you look at the water quality inside our Gibraltar tailings pond, we have 4- and 5-pound rainbow trout living in it as we speak. It's a standard engineering practice, a standard design. We know that if there was any leakage from the bottom of the tailings pond, we would pump it back up, we would monitor it, we'd see what kind of water actually came out. We would ensure that it had the water qualities, and if push came to shove, we would put in a water treatment plant. So you talk about $1 billion worth of copper and gold. This is the 10th largest undiscovered copper gold, or 10th largest discovered copper gold project in the world. This project would add significantly to the GDP of this province. It would return approximately $5 billion in tax revenue to each levels of government over its 22-year operating life. This is a huge and important project that was not properly evaluated by the federal government. And if we think about it objectively, constitutionally, the provincial government owns the mineral resources and rights inside their provincial boundaries. The federal government has a couple of approvals that they need to grant with respect to fish and fish habitat, mine effluent, and explosives. So the predominance of the mine permitting is done by the provincial government. They completely usurp their responsibilities in terms of their profile in this process, and it's really egregious of what they've actually done.
How significant was First Nations opposition? I saw a First Nations chief on television last night saying your company didn't deal in a respectful fashion with First Nations.
Well, Bill, we have a number of agreements with First Nations in the province. In northern British Columbia, we actually have an agreement with the Williams Lake Indian Band, which is just south of the city of Williams Lake. We think we have a pretty good relationship with most First Nations bands. The parties, the ruling elected folks out in the Chilcotin Nation have other political agendas that they face with respect to their rights and title. They've just they're just presented to the Supreme Court, basically trying to claim title over 42,000 square miles of land in the Central Cariboo. So we've obviously been caught up in a lot of that kind of issue with respect to dealing with the executives of the Chilcotin Nation. So there is baggage on a lot of this front. I've tried to meet with them. We've supported them over the years to the tune of $2.5 million to engage them. We get rebuffed at every opportunity. They are not interested in dealing with it. Yet, do not think that just because the chiefs are against it, that the large majority of Native people are against it. We have had many folks come to us and speak to us about employment opportunities. And in fact, if we look at Gibraltar, the indigenous population, the Native population in the area is roughly 4% of the total population. We have 12% First Nations employment at Gibraltar. That's nearly 100 people. We wanted to replicate that and provide opportunities for First Nations people out in the Chilcotin where there is nothing available. And I think if you look at what The ex-Grand Chief of the Chilcotin Nation said, Urban Charlie Boy, he said, there's nothing for our young people. There's no future. We have tried to create a future for them, yet they continually, for some reason, do not want to work with us and try and move this thing forward. So did that have some play in it? Obviously. We know how important Native politics are in the province, obviously with the Enbridge pipeline, now with us. And how does the federal government view that?
Mr. Hallbauer, thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Russell Hallbauer, President and CEO, Taseko. Up next, the Mayor of Williams Lake.